The last few videos I have been talking how the serpent, the poison one, came to Eve. In the very beginning, how he was allowed to use a voice to deceive, to avoid the horror in this world, and to divine appointment. Do any of you know what doppelganger means? Well, doppelganger is an important meaning to understand, and it is mythology as well. Someone who looks quickly like you, but isn't a twin. Originally, this was a ghost, and this was a word used in German. I had looked it up, and literally means double walker. It's a ghost or a shadow of yourself, a biologically unrelated look-alike of a living person. You know, you've ever gone somewhere and you go, I thought you were that person. But in fiction and mythology, a paranormal phenomenon is usually seen as a harbinger or bad luck, if you're into all that superstitious stuff. An example given is, I saw Cain at the movies last night, but he didn't seem to notice me when I called him, as he had passed for twins. A doppelganger is some kind of curse or through magic, and most likely dies. And Cain and Abel, most likely twins. Remember the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Cain and Abel, the story of Cain and Abel. Excuse me. In divine appointment and mode of worship for sinful creatures, we go back to Cain and Abel. Eve had said, I have gotten a man from the Lord. By the help of the Lord, an expression of pious gratitude, and she called him Cain. It was a possession it valued above everything else. So Eve, she had the son, and while the arrival of another son, which reminded her of the misery she had entailed on her offspring. So it led to the name Abel. Abel, for example, other weakness, vanity, and we can go to Psalms 39:5, as I spoke about yesterday. We went into the Psalms 39:5. We read about one of the chief singers, his name mentioned perhaps a special honor. Under depressing views of his frailty and prosperity of the wicked, the psalmist tempted to murmur, checks the expression of his feelings and how he led to regard of his case. All right, he prays for a proper view of his condition and for the divine compassion. So some take these words as flame, burst forth, but some take these words as fretting, but they are not essentially such. The tinge of discontent arises from the character of his supposed emotions, but addressing God, they had softened and subdued. So make me to know, experimentally appreciate how frail I am. When I shall cease, and his prayer answered, in his obtaining an impressive view of his vanity and the life of all men, and their transient state. Their pomp is a mere image, and their wealth is gathered, they know not for whom. The interrogation makes the implied and negative stronger. Though this world offers nothing to our expectation, God is worthy of all confidence. Back to the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and we come here to Cain and Abel. So pretty much we would think maybe Cain and Abel are twins. maybe a minute apart. I don't know. I wasn't there. But we read in this, Cain and Abel were probably twins, as I was saying. And during this early period, children were born in pairs, like the animals were in pairs. If you read back in Genesis, the beginning, everything was in pairs. And then when Adam and Eve when Adam was formed in Eve, the difference, if we read in that, they were yoked as they were one. One man means one, united, we see as one. One, they are equally yoked. So, as Cain and Abel, and it's thought that in that time period, so Abel was a keeper of sheep, feeder of a flock, which back in the Oriental countries they used goats and sheep. And Abel, though the younger, he's mentioned first. So I recall back at Forest City Community Church, it was either Pastor Rob or Pastor Nick talking about this. I think that time it was Pastor Nick. But as they're explaining this, they take everything that is said and back it up in the Word. Always go back and back it up. Just like on media, back up who we have on our list. Probably on account of this and the preeminent of his religious character. In the process time, if we look at Hebrew, at the end of days, it was probably on the Sabbath, which is the Saturday. But an offering unto the Lord, both manifested by the very act of offering. Their faith is in the being of God and his claims, and the reverence and worship. So he had a kind of offering been left in themselves, and it was a moral, natural then one should bring of the fruits of the ground, and the other should bring of the firstlings of his flock, and the fat thereof. So the Lord had respected unto Abel, and not unto Cain. So the words had respect to signify, if we look at Hebrew, to look at anything with a keen and earnest glance. It had been translated into kindle into fire. So the divine approval of Abel's offering was shown in its being consumed by fire. So we can go to chapter 15, 17 in Genesis about this. You can back it up in Judges 13, 20. If thou dost well, shalt thou not be accepted? A better rendering is, shalt thou not have the excellency? What is the true sense of the words referring to high privileges and authority belonging to the firstborn in patriarchal times? Sin lieth at the door. Well, sin lieth at the door, and sin offering is a common meaning of the word in the scriptures. And you can also back this up in Hebrews 9:28, in 2 Corinthians 5:21, and in Hosea chapter 4, verse 8. Excuse me. So the purport of the divine rebuke to Cain was this: why art thou angry, as if unjustly treated? If thou dost well, what innocent and sinless, a thank offering would have been accepted as a token of thy dependence as a creature. I'm only have a few seconds left, so how to make another. So, to understand from the very beginning of the knowledge of good and evil, and how Satan deceived his Lord's most elect, and I will continue to talk to you about this. It's very important to understand from the beginning in the book of Genesis.